Hey guys, so here is my baby turtle tank. There is about 2-inch baby red-eared cider in here. It's currently basking, but it's about to get in the water because I'm going to be feeding it. So here I have a tub of foods that it likes. And specifically, there's a bunch of baby dubia roaches in here and a bunch of lesser mealworms, or essentially an insect that's very similar to mealworms, but they're a heck of a lot smaller. So not sure if it'll focus there. I'm going to scare him into the water. Actually, he's going to get down into the water. You can see him down there. And I'll start to feed him. There we go. So he really loves these things. Let's see, go after that. Here, I'm going to try to adjust you guys so you can see the whole area. Okay, now you guys should really see what's going on a little bit better. And I will continue feeding him. So I'm not sure if it's a male or a female, but it really loves these, especially the lesser mealworms. Now what the lesser mealworms do is they will eat the dead dubia roaches. So this is actually a tub of the old, waste from the roach enclosure, but I didn't take out the babies and I didn't take out all these mealworms. So these mealworms can be really good, or these insects can be really good feeders, just as mealworms. They're essentially just really small mealworms. And the beetles are pretty cool too, because they're just like darkling beetles, but they're tiny. So that's pretty interesting. And then, let's see, looks like he got that one. And then there's really small roaches in here too, which he'll eat, or the red-eared cider will eat, but they're not as easy for him to eat. Try to get him. So he takes a lot longer because they're a lot wider than the mealworms. So I generally will. And this would be the exact same with mealworms with like a larger turtle, or even when mealworms are a lot smaller, like this size, they're pretty good. These are about as big as these ones get. They don't get too much bigger than this. So that's pretty interesting, I think. And there's like a ton of them, and they breed really readily in roach enclosures. So that's why I actually got them with my roaches when I bought red runner roaches, but I moved some of them over into the dubia roach enclosures, and they just exploded in population, which I think is really cool. And I think it's really cool that I'm able to utilize them like this. And I'm hoping that I can get my baby geckos to eat them as well, because I think they would be really good to feed to baby geckos. But overall, they seem to be best for baby turtles. Bigger turtles don't really see them, and I'm sure if you threw them in like food, they would probably eat them, but then some would get lost in the tank, and I think that would be kind of gross. So that's why I'm choosing to tongue feed this guy. And then I also do pellets, and that's kind of generally what I do, is just I use the ZoomEd maintenance pellets rather than the growth pellets, and I will feed them this. Now, red-eared ciders, they should eat, they're omnivores, so these are insects, so these are like the carnivorous side of that. But what being omnivorous means is that they eat both plant matter and animal matter, like these insects. So these guys will kind of scavenge in the wild. They'd eat like much larger dead fish and stuff, or maybe some other type of dead animal that goes into the water, and I'm sure they would utilize that. And then also they'll hunt for insects like these. I mean, they're not going to find these in rivers, but they're going to eat like aquatic insects and insects that have fallen into the water. And in captivity, that can look like crickets or mealworms or lesser mealworms or earthworms or beetles. Just a whole lot of things that you can breed in captivity or you can buy from pet stores. And roaches, they'll eat roaches really readily. I feed my adult turtles roaches all the time, especially my adult red-eared slider and yellow-bellied slider. The females, they just go absolutely nuts for really big dubia roaches. So that's definitely something that I recommend feeding. And then most turtles don't really seem to go for greens. You can try it with your turtle, and baby turtles especially, I don't think will just go for greens readily. Now, they will eat plants. Like in here, there's an anubias plant. I couldn't pull that off with some of my turtles because they do eat greens and they'll eat aquatic plants. And most turtles, even if they don't eat them, they'll rip them up. So they don't work out very well. But because this guy's so small and the anubias leaves are about the same size as him, I haven't had any trouble in here. And I think he does maybe bite at it sometimes, but it's not too much of a problem for the plant, and he's not destroying it. So I will just leave it in here, and it seems to be doing really well in this tank. And then there are some, like I have my adult yellow-bellied slider does eat greens properly, so she will eat the same greens that I feed to my green iguana, and sometimes she'll eat vegetables and stuff, and that can be good, but I don't think that it's necessary for turtles to eat greens because I've had so many that just refuse to do it. So I don't think it's that big of an issue in their diet, as long as they're getting some type of commercial pellet, which is generally what I recommend, because you don't want to give them like I wouldn't want to feed this guy purely these. It's also good that he's getting the commercial diet that he eats, and then these are helpful. There's also different types of meats and things like seafood that I believe you can feed, and then like things like crayfish and stuff like that, but I'm not really aware of what exactly is good and safe as far as those things are concerned, so I don't really do that as much. And I know that they can get like pyramiding and stuff, I think, if they're fed too much protein, so you don't want to have that happen. And then for the adults, I make sure that the big dubia roaches they're fed are coated with calcium powder. Now I'm sure they get calcium from the commercial diet, but because they're so big and they might produce eggs and stuff, as long as they're going to eat dubia roaches for me, I go ahead and coat that with calcium powder. And it looks like this guy is done because he didn't eat that last one. Let's see if I can get it before it gets to the bottom. Let's see. You sure? Okay. I think that's enough for him. But I think that's pretty much it as far as what you can feed turtles. And then feeding on insects is really good, especially if you breed them like I do. So I breed, as I said, red runner roaches, dubia roaches, and even hissing cockroaches. And I haven't fed any of the hissing cockroaches to the turtles yet, but I have fed one to my bearded dragon, and certainly not this guy. He's too small, because even out of when they're born, hissing cockroaches are pretty big. This guy can definitely eat red runner roaches as well. That would be good. But here I have the food. So I feed them these. Now what happens is these kind of expand, and then you can kind of chew at them and break them apart and stuff. So they're really big pellets, as you can see, and it's the maintenance formula. So it says for turtles 6 inches and above. I feed it to all my turtles. They do perfectly fine. And then I have some smaller fish pellets that I'll also feed him. But I think he's doing just fine. And like I said, once the water soaks in, then he can eat it. And then as far as, what else is going on here, it's just a 10-gallon. I would like a 20-gallon. I think a 20-gallon would be better. and it's just space limitation. So, I mean, if I had a 20-gallon here, I'd put them in a 20-gallon, but I have a couple fish tanks and whatnot going on. So this works right now. And then normally he'll sleep in the Nubius plant, which is pretty adorable. And then he'll go up and bask up here. And here we have a Zoomed double fixture with a Zoomed UVB light and the like splash proof Zoomed heat light. So all of this stuff I was given, actually. I mean, I bought the UVB light, but I was donated it. And also the turtle, somebody couldn't keep it anymore, so that's how I got it. And that's what's been going on. And then we have a whisper filter. I think it's for like a 30 to 40 gallon or something like that. But because I have all that moss and stuff growing out of the top and there's duckweed and stuff on there, it's kind of a slower, it's not super quick, but it gives some good flow in here. And I think that's perfectly fine. Doesn't seem to mess up the turtle whatsoever. And it keeps it filtered, but also the plants as well. So the Nubius and the moss and the duckweed. I took out duckweed yesterday, so there's not so much, but it'll grow back and completely cover everything. And it creates a really nice naturalistic type environment for the turtle. And then eventually, once it gets of size, I will move it to this tank. Unfortunately, there's quite a reflection, so I'm sorry about that. But this is a 125 gallon. It has 2 big map turtles, a western painted turtle, and 2 red-eared sliders. And there are the red-eared sliders right there. They are, one of them came with that turtle, the other one came in a similar situation. They've actually gotten pretty big, which is pretty crazy, but they were small like the other one, not as small and not at the same time, obviously, but they've been growing pretty quick and they're fed the exact same diet. They get dubia roaches every once in a while. I don't feed them the worms as heavily because they don't really recognize them as food because they're so small, but they have grown pretty quick and that's pretty cool. But you don't necessarily want them to grow super fast, and I think they're, growing as they should be. I don't think they're growing too fast, and I don't think I'm really creating any type of pyramiding. They're kind of domed, as you can see there, and this one has kind of raised scutes, but it was like that when I got it, or when I was given it, and then the other one is just kind of a full dome, and I think that's all right. I think that it is growing and doing well. And then if you've noticed, this one kind of has almost like the map turtle deal on its back. I think that's just a baby thing, so it'll outgrow that, and eventually it'll kind of flatten out. But as you can see there, it's kind of going at the duckweed, and duckweed is actually a pretty good food source for these guys. At least they'll eat it. I don't know if it's nutritionally very good at all, but because I have these 10 gallons with just fish, and then all all the other tanks have turtles, I'll generally take, once these have kind of grown over with duckweed, which will happen in here because this guy's so small and he can't eat it all, then I will go ahead and put that in the turtle tanks and the turtles will eat it. So that's something that can kind of get some greens to the turtles. Generally, turtles will only eat like aquatic plants and stuff like that, or they'll just destroy them. So this is pretty much what to feed a baby turtle. Now, if it's not eating, I suggest just waiting, essentially. And I don't know, I'm not entirely sure what exactly the protocol is when you just have turtles just born, but I'm assuming they'll just start eating on their own. Again, I'm not entirely sure because I've never hatched out turtles, so I'd assume that it wouldn't be too hard and they'll start eating after a couple days or something like that. And then as far as greens, I recommend romaine lettuce, not iceberg lettuce. Iceberg lettuce doesn't really have any nutritional value. And then other types of lettuces like red lettuce and things like that are more green and less white. And then there is dandelion greens are really good, and then you can get those out of your yard even if you don't have any type of fertilizers or weed killers or anything in your yard. And then mustard greens, kale, turnip greens, collard greens, things like that, watercress, things like that work really well for them as far as greens. And then, as I said, I use Zoo Med turtle diet. You can also use Missouri and other types of turtle diet. I don't think it matters all too much, but Zoo Med's what I use, and that's what a lot of people will say is really good, as well as Missouri. And this is what to feed a baby turtle. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and have a fantastic day.